Following up on the topic of how Armenians' perception of the world, thinking, identity have been formed, it would apparently be more precise if we reflected upon a historical period, or some parts of it, which will give us a wide material to understand the main essence of the raised questions. Today we'll have another goal, that is to show past phenomena, like the unfortunate Russia-Armenia-Turkey triangle. We did not come to this situation from nowhere, did we? And now we all search for a country to collaborate with in order to change the situation. What do people constantly talk about these days? America is right. Russia is the savior. Let's pass it all and make some relations with Turkey, etc. People have pinned their hopes on some external forces as they don't believe they can have their own stand on some issues and solve them. This has continued for hundreds of years. Nothing really goes well. That is why we should apparently suppose that we are not capable. The thinking, the perception of the world that exists in us hinder us from finding the answers to these questions. That is why it is worth reflecting upon the origins of it and observing. Then problems will be formed and we'll see whether we can solve them. I have always brought some examples of other nations displaying the same approaches, realizing that if you can't solve some issues, you should try to find its reasons. After that, you'll understand what your problem is. And after that, you'll obviously find a way, and many have found. We can reflect upon some configurations formed in complicated situations during Christian times when Armenians both succeeded and Armenia was torn apart. We can even see a crisis of identity. We can recognize the same phenomena in today's thinking of ours. We have already carried out an experiment to see how the Armenian family created thinking, which, as we often see, is deeply rooted in us. Let's take a look at several maps. On this map, Eastern Rome is represented. It is often called the Byzantine Empire. In the course of time, when it dawned upon Rome that fighting against Christianity is meaningless, Rome adopted and relocated the capital city to the east, today's Constantinople, which Emperor Constantine proclaimed the capital city of Rome by his name. That is the second Rome. Later, it was called the Eastern Roman Empire. In reality, it is the same Rome. They moved the capital city. Why? It stands to reason that Christianity triumphed in all that territory. They took the capital to the central part. How is this notable? It's a well-known fact. I don't want to go into history. I am only interested in the political approach of all of this. The capital is moved to a new place. The reason was the new religion. How is this interesting? As in the Middle Ages, and until then, politics was decided by the religion. It is essential for us to understand that many fragments will be clear now. All power is given by God. In Christianity, that fundamental thesis decided politics, the problem of power. People were convinced by the church that the only truth was that. And there's someone who has the right to rule over others in the name of God, to give a law, to punish. This belief was deeply rooted in people, and now it is very easy to offer someone as a king. Why is this statement important in regard to this theme? The emperor had to fight so as to gain dominance over ecclesiastical institutions. If it is a capital, then it should become the lawful master of this Christianity. And it, obviously, happened just like that. We don't go deep into history again. It is a well-known fact that during one of the usual ecumenical councils, which took place in the suburbs of Constantinople, Chalcedon, the foundation of church's schism was laid down. Why? Because apparently it is an empire. It should find a way to prove why it is the center. Those were old centuries and had already adopted Christianity within the empire. And now a new one has come and says, I am the ruler. And obviously, a new theological thesis would come along. Now it is known what the dispute was about. Miaphysite, Diaphysite, and so on and so forth. Some did not even attend, for instance, Armenia, Georgia. They could not attend on account of political situations. Look, this is really interesting. Those who had attended did not give assent, and from here, conflict began. It is natural. The new direction was adopted by Rome, and a new policy of repressing others was launched. They were claimed as sects in 451. After that, some fascinating processes were formed. Obviously, the repressions continued, and the others either obeyed or disobeyed. In reality, later it turned out that they had not obeyed. At the beginning of the 7th century, Armenia, which is 630, and Georgia, 626, if I'm not mistaken about the numbers, finally obeyed the new direction of Christianity. The well-known Catholicus Ezra made a decision, under pressure or not, the interpretations aren't important, to join the new religion, Neophytism, also known as Chalcedonism. But the most essential thing that happened was the creation of the new religion, Islam. During the same time, it is said to be in 615, 630. What was that? Now we see the beginning of the 7th century. On the right, we see a land turned green. What was Islam? Generally, it was well accepted in the world that some nomadic tribes, Bedouins, used to launch such movements, and a new religion was born from it. But there's something suspicious here. As it is said in 660, that is 2-3 decades after the birth, all of a sudden the representatives of this Islam who spoke Arabic created a capital city in Syria, Damascus, which was a remarkable Christian country. Apart from that, the most essential thing that fascinates is the central thesis of the religion, holy war. What kind of a holy war of nomadic tribes in the deserts? Against whom? It was clear against whom. Earlier, that so-called New Arabic Caliphate, I'm not sure how it was called then, invaded Rome's capital for the first time. How is it possible for nomadic tribes to make most powerful ships, powerful state, let alone beleaguered the Second Rome? Obviously, they didn't succeed and returned after a few years. But the facts themselves evince that history wasn't like that at all. And who were those people who organized and announced a holy war that quickly? What was the announcement of holy war about? There's enough evidence to suppose that the stream was political. Coalition, in today's words. Their goal was to destroy the Second Rome, Constantinople. Who would do such a thing? Isn't clear who? The Christians who had already been declared an enemy of Rome. If we look at things this way, it becomes clear what had happened. The schism of Christianity had led to a creation of a new religion by the Christians who were declared an enemy. At first, they created a new political coalition, which naturally became holy over decades. It again recurs to the main essence of religion. See how interesting this is? Under the disguise of religion. Let's go back to Armenia in order to understand how it affected us. Armenia adopted the religion of Byzantine at the same time when a new religion and a new state were being formed, caliphate. Obviously, a triangle was formed in which Armenia had some relations with the enemy of Byzantine. But what kind of relations? If we take a look at the massive scale of Armenian churches of the time, it becomes obvious to us that those were powerful, prosperous times, almost 95 years. Such massive things were not built as an end in itself. Such things were built because Armenia had become a member of ecumenical Christianity. It had influenced the whole aspects of life. These are the perks. What's the bad side of Armenia's orientation in the 7th century? When Arabs tried to beleaguer Constantinople for the second time, they did not leave Armenia this time. And they massacred numerous clergymen, ishkhans, rulers, in order to bend Armenia to their will, as it had become clear to them that it was impossible to negotiate directly with Byzantine. At that time, Armenians were forced to pull out. The other Catholicos called for a gathering in Manaskert and renounced Chalcedonianism. This is the second phase, which again shows how the triangle works. Both Byzantine and Arabian Caliphate were constantly trying to gain dominance over the territory of Armenia in various ways. The 8th century is by and large Black Century. I have just mentioned the quality and massive scale of Armenian churches in the 7th century. And if you find an 8th century stone and compare it to that from the 7th century, you could see that Armenia was reduced to the Stone Age until the half of the 9th century, really. See how long it took. There was no life. They killed it. In the second half of the 9th century, Byzantine decided to dominate again. In 860, Armenia was offered to return to Chalcedonianism. Armenians refused the offer as they were afraid. But Byzantine gave political support to Armenia. The rise of Bagratides. They used Armenians to suppress, weaken Arabs. Ashot I accepted it. Ashot II received great support. Both Arabs and Byzantines sent crowns as a gift. But what was the reality? They gave status of king with the help of Armenian ishkhans, and it paid off for Byzantine. Caliphate became weak. At the time, the capital was relocated in Baghdad. When they weakened the position of caliphate with the help of Armenians, the foundation of Byzantine expansion was laid down. Look at this map. Byzantine launches an expansion by itself towards Christian countries, Armenia and Georgia. This is a long story. There's no need to go into history. The essential thing is the expansion. They came and captured it all. all were surprised at how quickly land surrendered. In 1045, Ani, the capital city, also surrendered. Some lands of Georgia were captured as well. The Byzantine expansion itself was very interesting. The essential thing is that there was a split among Armenians from the religious point of view, as there was no political support for Armenia. Armenians have kept lands in southern part, around Lake Van, Taron, Vaspurakan. Clearly, the Ishkhans who had received support must have been loyal to Chalcedonianism. Two directions in religion started to develop at the same time among Armenians. Today's disputes with Georgia related to the church, this is my church, this is your church, are rooted in those times. It was about religion, I repeat. And the Bagratides were closer to Georgia than to the southern part. I would like to highlight an essential circumstance here, which is very surprising and hasn't been explained by historians. I lean on facts, but you cannot comprehend the political content from historiography. Why has Byzantine constantly been taking Armenians to the central part since the 10th century? You can't help getting surprised at facts. There were hundreds of thousands, I don't know, millions, whatever. In 1021, Byzantine somehow persuaded Artsuruni Ishkhans to surrender the country to him. They surrendered the country for uncertain reasons, took their people, and moved to the central parts of the empire. They had done it before, and they did it again. This is the most surprising thing, and it'll be hard to find answers to this if we don't look at the map to see what was happening in Rome. In the Second Rome and Caliphate, something essential changed. What changed? The first Rome that we are talking about had been destroyed during the time. In reality, only eastern part of the empire functioned. These are well-known facts. European tribes destroyed and weakened the first Rome in the 5th century. However, in the 10th century, Rome began to rise. Rising, it started to spread its policy to Europe, creating the Holy Roman Empire, and adopted hostile policy towards Constantinople. In the 11th century, in 1054, they had an overt conflict. New Christian religion was born, Catholicism. Look, it does the same thing. The second Rome created a new dogma, and the other one, having a political conflict, tried to challenge Christianity again in order to gain advantage. And an overt hostility against Byzantine started. At the time, very essential things happened. After the expansion, Constantinople took the last step. Romanus IV Diogenes, with his troops, continued to Manaskert, which was the old Armenian center of religion. See how interesting this is? What was that done for? There are numerous explanations. But the fact is, in Manaskert, his forces encountered other troops, the troops of Baghdad Caliphate. This is because in 1054 in Baghdad, we see that the split of Christian world took place. In 1055, an interesting thing took place. The weakened caliph, also known as Abbasids, invites Turkish troops. We'll talk about Turks a lot later. With the help of Turks, he purged the powerful Persian elite, also known the Buyids, from the territory of Arab Caliphate. Then Caliph handed over his power to those troops, and since then they have appeared everywhere. In 1071, that fierce battle took place in Manashkert. Everyone fought, Armenians, Greeks from here, Armenians from there. Those were for religious reasons. See, about some religious issues. During those battles, Roman Diogenes was taken as a captive by Arabs and then was sent to Constantinople, where he was killed, deprived of power. And a power change occurred. This is apparently the most significant thing happened at that time. After that, the empire started to dissolve. Here on this map, you can see some small ishkhans. From 71 till the end of the century, a process of short duration started to take place. Over 10 to 15 years, small rulers came to power, establishing their authority in the territory. It was said of some to be Armenian, some 6 of Assyrian origin, different origins, different places. So a process of dissolution began. In parallel, in 1096, the Crusaders of Rome started to appear on these lands. Their main goal was to destroy Eastern Christianity. Here, very uncertain processes developed. Constantinople adopts incomprehensible behavior, conducted a certain policy. The small rulers, after some time, started to adopt Islam. On this map, the rulers are clearly represented. They had all had Islamic names. For example, in the territory of Armenia around Lake Van were Shah Armens, who were said to have become Armenian, which is an uncertain term. Muslim Armenian, Arabic speaking. The Danishmi is the largest in the territory. According to historical facts, the latter was a Muslim Ishkhan, most powerful, but you don't know why, a great friend of Armenians, etc. Since 1080, Cilicia had been consolidated. The Armenians who were moved from these territories somehow manifested themselves. However, over time, Muslim rulers came to power on those lands. Apart from all this, there's an interesting fact in history which highlights the need of reconsidering the history. The Turkic squad, which had taken part in Manashkert battles, after several years was moved to the suburbs of the capital, Nicaea. What an interesting thing. What would they do there? They were in power in the caliphate. It seemed they went to fight. They would have come. And what did they do there? In reality, the squad was taken there to be used again. There's another fascinating fact here. When the Crusaders came to this area from Nicaea, and from there they were attacking Constantinople, I will now show you. The troops were moved to Konya. At first, it surprised me how many Armenians migrated to Malaysia, Sebastia, Kilikia. There were cities that became completely Armenian. After that, Islamification began as from the beginning of the 12th century. The small rulers that I'm showing you now were established that time. As far as I've observed, and the facts evince, the history is more complicated than it seems. Byzantine had adopted a policy towards Christians. Why? As fear has changed. Now the enemy was Rome, not Baghdad. Look how the configuration has changed. In the relations between Rome and Constantinople, the latter started to Islamify its Christians lest they fell under Rome's influence and destroyed the empire. This one can be clearly seen from the Ishkhans. And as a result, the whole Byzantine was Islamified alongside the capital. We don't know the scales of Islamization of the central part, but we know for sure that Cilicia was saved due to the Crusaders. It managed to rise a state. It is notable from the political and religious point of view that Ani was integrated within Georgia. Why? At the beginning of the 12th century, Turks invaded Georgia, but they were pulled out of the lands by Armenian Georgian troops. After that, Georgia and Armenia unified against Islamization. One part of the nation adopted Chalcedonicism. The second one remained unaltered and got consolidated in Cilicia. The central one fell under Islam's influence. Three different identities. I'll stop here as my statements may seem non-essential to some people. What characterizes the country the best? The coins used by it. These are Byzantine coins. These are standard coins. Here we can see how the king is crowned by the Christian clergyman. We have some examples of Muslim small rulers' coins as well. These belong to the Artikids. These are Byzantine standard coins too, but the letters are Arabic. Let's take a look at another one. Again, it's with Arabic letters, but the other side of a coin is in European, Roman design. Ishkhan Danishmendi is an Islamified Armenian. The coins of Cilicia also corresponded to the standard. No coins were off-standard. Here, the form of Armenian cross is sealed on the coin. These are quite interesting facts. Again, it is a Muslim spiritual, as we can presume from his clothes. These facts evince that the central authority, Constantinople, gives power to those who adopt Islam, hindering them from falling under the influence of Rome. Let's look at this from a different point of view. What were the scales of that Islamization? We have to search for a specific culture. From Sebastia to Van, since those times, Muslim cultural legacy was inherited. This is Malatya in the 12th century. We can see Muslim shrines with Armenian forms. This is one of the first mosques in the first half of the 12th century. Only architects can give professional opinion about this matter. This is a Muslim shrine in the Armenian architectural style in Erzurum. That highlights the large scale. Look, it's a cemetery in the famous historical city of Kvat, near the coast of Lake Van. Kvat has several cemeteries. In this one, more than 8,000 tombstones have been saved. At first glance, they seem to be cross stones, but there are no crosses and the writing is in Arabic. The ornaments are almost the same, only of the rich. No poor could do this. So it was a Muslim society with art and similar culture. Who were they? Shah Armenians, it's their center. They're said to be Armenified Turkic dynasty. How is this possible if they were Muslim and their language was Arabic? On the contrary, they were Islamified Armenian dynasty. It becomes clear from the Armenian culture. It's an Armenian culture, but they are of different religion. They're not Christian. Only crosses are missing. The ornaments are the same. The scale is often richer than the Christian one. Why? As it was the center of trade routes. More than 500 Muslim caravanserais in the Armenian architectural style were found on those roads. None of the researchers, both European and Russian and others, nobody denies that this was built by the Armenians. They are not sure who it was built for. Later, we'll reflect on the Seljuk culture, the Seljuk state, which are a great mystery. Researchers are not sure whom to ascribe this whole culture to. Yes, it is a Muslim shrine built by Christian Armenians. But who said that Armenians were Christians? We do. This shrine was built in the beginning of the 15th century. It shows that over centuries, this specific style has continued to exist. It is one of the most famous caravanserais. If architects take a look at this very photo, they probably won't understand what it is. The architectural style is that of Sanahin and Takhbat. This one is the mosque in the inner yard. It has similarities with Noravank as well. These are entrances. The construction and the ornaments look very similar. Often, the name of the architect is written in Armenian, but no one knows for sure who that was built for. These are figures which are not accepted in Muslim culture. I'll talk about this later. We constantly see these figures on coins and in architecture as well. Whose culture is this then? This is another caravanserai in medieval Armenian style in Yerzhinka. This is an interesting one too. An Armenian church in Sebastia which has figures on its walls. It is the only one that has Muslim religious leaders pictured on its walls. These leaders are said to be the benefactors of Christian churches. What a fact! Special rulers were appointed to keep those churches under control. Let's have a look at some other examples as well. Madrasea religious school. In this school, only architects can give professional opinion concerning the interior of the building. In order to understand the political aspect of all this, we should take a look at the developments of the relations between the first and the second Rome. On this map, you can see how Catholics conquered the capital, Constantinople, in 1204. The Greeks, who were living on the territory at the time, migrated to the east, Nicaea, creating their own state. Imagine the extent of the confrontation. It Islamized the population there. It lost its territories and stayed there. Let's pause here for a moment. On this map, you can see the territory of the Hologites, that is, Mongols. We have to pass on another phase of history that's called Raid of Yellow Jihad, or Yellow Crusaders. A surprising phenomenon. Due to this, we'll understand how the configuration of the political centers change and how it affects the nation of that territory. It's an essential theme. We'll return to it next time so that we understand today's situation of ours. Now and then, the great powers appear and configurations may change. And we must understand what has changed. It's constantly talked about why the Second War of Karabakh took place, because configurations have changed. Decisions, depending on time, are made differently. Then from certain time, great powers make other decisions. We don't understand that. We don't see footnotes. We saw how the Christian empire destroyed its Christian allies, and Armenia as its center. Yes, policy indeed changes depending on needs. Today we saw that very clearly. And next time we'll touch upon the most complicated theme. How could some nomadic tribes appear in the territory with anti-Muslim flags? That's why the movement was called Yellow Jihad. But we have to understand where it came from the first Rome.